Okay, we are back with part two of Ask an Archer. We're here with Daniyar from Kazakhstan. We had part one yesterday where he gave us an introduction to himself, his background, his excellent book, his well-researched book, his calendar, his Etsy page, and his YouTube channel. So we want to encourage people to go and subscribe to his channel as well. Today, we're just going to touch upon some terminology that Daniyar is supporting or wants to kind of argue his point, which is quite an interesting topic. And it has to do with terminology of different bows and how we classify certain types of bows. As we know, names and words have meanings and have an effect on how we understand the background of a particular piece of equipment or a period of time and things like that. So Daniyar has some interesting conclusions or findings and arguments about some of the things in his book. So Daniyar, we're just going to get straight back into it. Thank you for joining me again. I'm going to just share the screen and we'll pick up where we left off from yesterday, and I'll hand it over to you. Let's go full screen and okay, off you go, Daniyar. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, and thank you for having me again. It's a big pleasure and honor. So we're continuing where we left, and I promised you a little bit of academic rant over terminology. So here it comes. Anyways, so my ancestors, Kazakhs, and our neighboring nomadic nations, peoples, used at least two types of bows in the recent centuries. I mean, I'm talking about latest 500 years roughly. So in that period of time, we used roughly we used two types of bow, which is well documented. You've seen some of the image in the previous video, and also we have surviving bows in the museums. So this is well documented that we have used these two types
Do
of
you
bows.
have? Sorry,
And
Daniyar. Do you have
I refer to them
do
as lesser Kazakh.
you have museums in Kazakhstan, or you're referring to museums elsewhere?
Both in
Ah,
Kazakhstan and elsewhere,
okay, very good.
because because our museums have some examples, but probably even more remained in within our neighbors' countries' museums in Russia, China, maybe Iran, even Europe, even Britain, and even the States.
Sure.
So it's kind of spread all over. But I'm talking about the examples that I saw personally and depictions that I studied personally. So two types of bow: lesser Kazakh horsebow and large Kazakh horsebow. And when I originally came up with this terminology, I received some criticism because this is not a standard terminology accepted in the archery or weaponology world. Because, for example, if you look at the top one, which one to the one they are referred to as lesser Kazakh horsebow, most specialists will recognize immediately that this is a so-called Crimean Tatar bow or Tatar bow. And it's very similar to Turkish bow, to Ottoman bow, but it's slightly larger in dimensions, and it has this curvature next to the handle. So the shape is slightly different, but the CS, the Kasan eye, everything else, the grip form, shape are very similar, and design, composition, structure, everything else is pretty much the same. So the problem I have here is my rant, academic rant, is the term, the Crimean Tatar bow, because if you look at the map, the area where this bow was used historically was very large, and Crimea represents only the westernmost part of it. And I'm gonna just name just a few other peoples behind Crimea, to the east and to the south of Crimea, who used it. And I would say Nogais used it, Bashkirs, Kalmyks, Kazakhs, Karakalpaks,
Kipchaks.
the medieval Uzbeks, yes, Kipchaks, uh, Tatars,
Mm,
Central Asian nomads, Siberian nomads. So pretty much the entire remnants of
mm,
the Golden Horde. They all
mm,
use this same type of bow,
mm,
but it received the name from just one and not even biggest location. And so I kind of compare this situation with the like tip of the iceberg. Somebody saw the tip of the iceberg and they thought that was it. Or another
mm,
analogy I bring is an apple. For example, if you look at the apple up close, you will
mm,
see just an apple and you'll think this is just an apple. But if you zoom out, you will see that this is an apple tree
mm,
full of apples. They're all exactly the same. So it's not an apple, it's an apple tree. So this is kind of the same situation, apple and apple tree situation. And it's just after I studied this subject and I kind of unearthed the truth,
mm,
it started sounding very weird to me that we use this term. For example, my ancestors, the Kazakhs, used it, and if I would travel back in time and find one of my ancestors who used this bow, and I told
mm,
him, "Hey, you're using a Crimean Tatar bow," and he would say,
mm,
"No, it's a local made. We use this kind of bow for generations, for centuries, and I've never been to Crimea. So
mm,
why would you say something like that? So I think we either need to come up with a better term overall, or every of those peoples that I just named have a right to call it their own. For example, the Bashkir bow, the Kazakh bow, the Nogai bow, or whatnot. So whoever used this design could claim it as their own because it was locally produced and used, and people thought of it as their own type.
mm.
So
That's
that's
that.
one of the types.
It's definitely a very compelling argument, and I can see the logic in that. And it does raise a good question as to why, like you said, one small part of the larger
Right,
area,
right.
kind of adopts the name of the bow. Are you saying that if we call it the Kazakh lesser or Kazakh large bow, does this description cover a wider area of where the bow was used rather than just us focusing on one small Western area?
Well, first of all, let me answer the first part of the question. Why did it get this name? It's because probably the Westerners came in contact with Crimean Tatars because they were further to the west, and
Mm-hmm.
they noticed that they used different type from Ottomans, and so they just labeled it the Crimean Tatar bow.
Mm,
And this represents a Eurocentric view. They didn't know that other peoples also used it.
right.
And so in this case, I decided to go kind of being Kazakh centric as opposed to Eurocentric. you,
Sure.
you know what I mean? To kind of
Mm-hmm.
make my point. Probably we will need a better name for it because I obviously we don't want to leave anyone out, and we can't just
Mm,
list all the names when we just
of course.
describing
Yeah.
one type of bow. So
Mm,
I don't know. We probably need to come up with a better name for it.
mm,
So otherwise, everybody, all the reviews I've heard are very favorable of this bow. It's performing pretty much just like Ottoman bow. It's fast, it's
mm-hmm,
agile,
mm-hmm,
and so it was used earlier from the Golden Horde period. to pretty much the end
Mm.
of the bow era. But at the same time, the other type of bow started emerging and appearing from the east and south probably area, and I refer to it as large Kazakh horsebow. But it is obviously, as the specialists would immediately determine from the look of it, it's the one on the bottom. It's the Manchu type bow, as it is known today.
Yeah.
And this is again where my rant continues, because first of all, I showed you in the previous video pictures from Central Asia where they used the same exact type of bow. I showed you period paintings,
Mm.
and those bows were locally produced in Central Asia,
Mm.
because Central Asia wouldn't import something from China, because Central Asia was a powerhouse, economical powerhouse of that period. They had one of the best, if not the best, manufacturing system in the region. They had their cities, they had their craftsmen, artisans. They can build anything, and they were actually one of the major importers, because the Silk Road, that's exactly where it went through Central Asia, and they were competing with China for the markets because they were so good at
Mm.
it. So
Mm.
definitely those bows were Central Asian product produced, and uh, so it's not fair to Central Asian states as well to say that they were using Manchu bow, because it was uh, locally produced and
Mm.
widely used in Central Asia. So that's another one we kind of need to revisit and study. First of all, uh, I don't have any information on where it actually first appeared, whether it was a Manchu design original, or maybe it originated in Central Asia. We don't know that. Hello, can you
Yes.
hear me?
Yeah. No, I'm with you. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So speaking of the later type, the large Kazakh horsebow of Manchu type, as I
Mm.
decided to call it, they also came in different variations. And if you can go forward to the next slide.
Mm. I must say, Danyar,
Yeah, can
your
you please
drawings are
flip over
very
page?
accurate, down to the knots on the string and the detailing of the sears and the limbs and everything. Okay, we just dropped the line temporarily there, but we're back now. So I was just crediting you with your excellent drawing skills. It's quite difficult to draw the bows that, although they look quite similar, they do have distinct differences in terms of the length of the limbs, the sears, the handle, just small things like where the curves are and things like that. I can see you've done quite an accurate job on that. So I wanted to just commend you on that.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm trying my best here. So speaking of the second type of bow, the large Kazakh horsebow of Manchu type, options or subtypes, if we call it. For
Mm.
example, the one on the top is a drawing of a bow that we have in the museum in Almaty. It's a large bow. It's large even for Manchu type bow. It's very heavy. I've seen a similar bow in one of the Steven Selby's videos, but he didn't explain what it was for. But it was basically a massive Manchu type of bow. I'm still looking for an information on it, but we have one of those in our local museum. And the one on the bottom is again the same kind of bow, but if you can notice, it's asymmetrical.
Mhm.
And I think you covered asymmetrical design in one of your previous videos, right? Quite a
Yes,
few
I think
times.
with Mihai Cosme, he came up with a bow which was slightly asymmetrical, so that the higher limb is
Right.
longer than the lower one. But we know this is nothing new, because the Japanese with their Kudo and their Yabusame, they have extremely asymmetrical bow as well.
Well, in our region, particularly in Kazakhstan, asymmetric bows existed from the very beginning, from the Saka time, from the Scythian time. And the Hans had asymmetric type, and even the Kazakhs still had this asymmetric option. So it was very persistent in terms of preference and design. So speaking of differences between these two bows and how they perform, the lesser Kazakh horsebow of the Crimean Tatar type is faster, it's more agile, it gives better velocity, uses lighter arrows, shoots faster, overall is a lighter and more it's more suitable for horseback archery because it's more wieldable, so to speak. And the large Kazakh horsebow of Manchu type was a later adoption, and it's larger, it's heavier, and it uses much larger arrows, much heavier arrows. To me, they even look more like small javelins than arrows, just monster arrows. And from my research, I read that they were designed to penetrate enemies from close distances with these heavy arrows, kind of one deadly blow from almost like not point blank, but very close distance.
Were they?
So different
Would
tactics,
you
different bows, but they
would you
became.
sorry? Would you say that they were for armor piercing, or it would just to penetrate like very hard leather armor, or would it be steel armor or something stronger?
Well, I think this subject must be studied more carefully to make a concrete. I can only at this point speak only of what I've read, and the sources that I had claim that it's been used for close range shooting of unarmed enemies. But at the same time, I've seen a lot of arrowheads with Botkin type arrowheads, and they're usually designed to penetrate armor or chainmail. So I think and armor was also used until even in early 20th century. Some of the areas where this bow was used, they still used armor, lamellar armor, leather lamellar armor, and chainmail. So this is a very good question that we need to investigate more. We need to investigate more, I think. So if we go a little further.
Next page.
Yeah, next page, please.
Okay. With a diagram or without?
Yeah, this one.
This one.
So
Okay.
it's just a quick one. It's showing this is the bow that also in the museum. It shows the cross sections of the limbs.
Yeah.
And again, if someone can study it, it's pretty much identical to Turkish bow.
Right.
All these sections where the reach appears at the Kasan eye, the handle, the limbs themselves, pretty much identical. And that's the image of the scraper that was most likely used for scraping the grooves. I think you covered
Okay.
that with Adam Karpovich.
Oh yes, for putting on the sinew. Yeah.
Yeah. No. it's for grooving the horn and the wooden belly when you attach them together.
Oh yes. So when you're putting the glue on, you mean? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right.
And if you go one page further,
Okay.
yeah. So this is the same bow how it appears in the museum right now. They wouldn't let me photograph it, so I had to draw it by
Okay.
hand. Yeah. And the funny detail that any specialist would pick immediately is that this is that so-called Crimean Tatar bow, but they put it in the Manchu type bow holster, and this one
Yes.
is most likely a Manchu produced. This one I'm not gonna argue because I've seen the same exact bow holsters on photographs of Manchu archers. So
Right.
this one
Right.
must be import or at least local copy of it. So they kind of put the wrong bow in the wrong holster. The periods, the geography doesn't match.
Right.
But again, I put it just for information and reference.
Have you seen quivers that are more locally made or Kazakh style
Yes,
than say the Manchu ones? And how do they differ?
our design. Well, first of all, the bow holster is closed. If you look at this one, it has an open end.
Yeah.
Yep. Because
Yeah.
no, I'm talking about the other end where
Oh, down here.
yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Right.
And that was done for Manchu bow holsters because they were so long.
Of course.
Yeah, it just had to stick out a little bit. Now the Kazakh horsebows, and I've seen plenty of photographs, but I never seen a live one in the museum. It would have a closed end, fully closed end, and usually they were made of leather. So they wouldn't use application. They would use tooled leather patterns. In other words, pressed leather. It was just one piece of leather with pressed patterns, as opposed
Right.
to application, as we can see here. So we can go to the next slide.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, this one just shows how this large Kazakh horsebow of Manchu type looks like, unstrung, strong, and pulled. Just for the reference, I put it here. And then if we go to the next slide, this is again, I've drawn it in the museum, and the cross section of the limbs and everything. And again, anyone who knows can spot immediately that this is pretty much the Manchu type design. And on the next slide, if you will, flip, yep, it's the same bow now in color.
Yeah.
We can see how it's covered with leather.
Some very nice detail there. I have just one question on the seers here. This white here thing here. This is for where the knot of the string is resting.
Not necessarily a knot. It's just in English they call it string bridge. In our language we call it tobershak, and it kind of it prevents the string from slipping, because there is this bend, and the string is kind of being in the unnatural position. It's bent, and it's trying to slip of this
Right.
bend.
Yes.
So to prevent it from slipping, they had to put the string bridge.
I see. Okay.
Yep. So I think this is it for the bow types that were used in the Kazakh Khanate, and I already covered all the previous types before. So these were still used very recently, these two types.
Sure.
And that concludes this section, and we can move to the next one.
Yeah. Which page is it? The next page or?
go until you see a picture.
Okay.
Yep, this one.
Okay.
So this is this section. I'm kind of it's a matter of my professional pride, because this is kind of my 2 cents
Right.
into explaining how the bow works. I found this kind of what I think a cool way to explain how archery, how the bows work mechanically, because uh, other authors explained it the way they saw it, and I explained it as an sort of as an artist maybe.
Yes.
So I imagine that if we look at a person from the top, kind of top view, if we put a camera like hanging
Bird's eye view.
on the
Yeah.
top of person and looking down, and that person would grab a piece of rope behind his back, and then we put an arrow kind of like sliding at the neck. And so if we pull the string and person would resist, this is kind of the work of a bow. But in this particular case, I wanted to compare it with the longbow, how the longbow works. And this is why the person is shown with stretched hands and straight, because this is how the longbows work, the English longbow,
Yeah,
the one
without any curves or bends, right?
not the recurve bows, but the yeah. Hello?
Yes. No, I was saying the shape of the body here, the arms are straight to represent the longbow, which does not have any curves or bends in.
Right. Exactly. And now if you imagine if somebody would pull the string behind and sure.
Okay, sorry, we dropped the line. Yeah, so we were saying the shape of the body represents here the longbow, which does not have any bends or curves in.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Right. So imagine if this was a live person and somebody would pull the rope, kind of like an arrow and string, and the person would resist trying to shoot an arrow. With your arms fully stretched, you would have to apply a lot of force. And still, even if you manage to pull it and shoot an arrow, uh, you wouldn't get a very high velocity. And that's the problem with the longbows. In order to make them more powerful, you have to make them thicker, and the thicker they get, the heavier they get, and that affects velocity. And that's why they always underperform comparing to composite bows. And if you go to the next slide, please.
Wow. I love these images. This is the first time, Daniyar, I've seen this type of application or comparison with the body, and I must say it's very very interesting, very impressive.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's why I say it's my 2 cents. So the one on the top is showing a bow of the so-called Manchu type with just, and you can immediately see that now that a person representing a bow bent his arms in the elbow, he gets this leverage immediately, and it gets much easier for him to pull it with less strength applied and more velocity. And that's exactly what bow on the bottom, and that represents the type of bow like Ottoman bow, Crimean Tatar bow, or even the Mughal bow that has two bends now, that has Pasanai. And so that would be equivalent of a person also bending his wrist. So we have an elbow bend and then leverages 4 points of leverage, and it gets even more powerful this way. And this is why this type of bow design would be even faster, even more agile, and that is confirmed by the physics, by the known physics of these types of bows. So that's kind of my take for people who trying to build bows so that they can understand kind of very in very understandable terms, comparing their own bodies to the work of bow, how it all operates, and where the composite and these diagrams, by the way, could be used to put an end to an argument which bow is better, a self bow or recurved composite bow, because it's no competition. As much as I love self bows, long bows, you can see that the physics are just again against them. This is
Absolutely.
well,
Yeah, no, it's
it's
quite
no surprise
self-explanatory.
because recurved composite bow is few millennia ahead of so it's a development. So and we can go faster here. Flip the page again to the next image. Yep, right here. So this image, in this chapter, I talk about anatomy of the bows, and I don't want to talk a lot.